So you've just picked up Greymoor, and you want those mythic items, but which one should you farm first? Well, in today's video guys, I'm going to go through and break down which one you should spend the time focusing on and really answer, is it right for you? So stay tuned. Hey, it's Dan, and welcome back to Unified Gaming. As I've said in the introduction, we're going to go through and really break down the mythic items. Are they right for you? Is that Battlegrounds you want to play? Maybe it's Imperial City, Cyrodiil. Maybe you want to be like a tank or a healer. We're going to go through a unique scaling system that I've created to really help kind of highlight what are they good and what are they bad at, having tested the items extensively on PTS and also getting them on the live server for you. And if you like these kind of videos, then do make sure that you are liked and you are subscribed so you don't miss out on future content. So I'm going to go through and look at the mythic items and kind of break it down into just what are they good at basically. To help you do that, I've actually come up with a numerical ranking system that really looks at the item and classifies it in battlegrounds, duels, Cyrodiil, you name it. To help make it clearer, I'm going to quickly go through it like an example item. So in the name is just what the item's called, the effect is what does it do, or the proc conditions for example. Magicka and stamina refers to which build is it better on, a Magicka character or a stamina character. Role is kind of what role does it have, is it better on tanks, healers or damage dealers, so DPS. Ease to obtain is basically how long does it take to obtain. 5 is very easy, 1 is really hard. So in this example 5 is like within an hour, maybe just over an hour, so this is quite a quick thing to get. Duels is basically how good is this in a duel, in a one-on-one. 5 is the best, 1 is the worst. So duels, this is okay. For Battlegrounds, you can see this is not that great, it's not horrific, but it's not great. Solo, this is really bad. Duo, this would be really good, so this test item would be really good in a duo in 2 of you. As for small scale, for me that's less than 5 people. Medium scale is between 6 and 12 people, and large scale is 12 people plus. So as you can see, this test item is pretty bad in all of those things. Viability is basically how viable is this to actually run on a build. Would you give up too much run on this item, or will you actually get enough back to make it somewhat usable? So in this example 3, it's you get something from it. 5 is yes, definitely run this item, it's like really good. 1 is it's really bad. And then to help tie it all together, we have the total. The idea is that if the total is higher, the better the item is. And throughout all of this, I'll give you some kind of just prompts on how I've tested it, little notes, so do stay tuned. So the first item is Bloodlord's Embrace. Now this item basically puts an uncleansable dot on somebody that they can't get rid of. If you bash them, when you bash them and then you block damage from them, you get Magicka back every single second, and a lot of it. It also works through block, so it's one of the ways to get Magicka back through blocking with an ice staff, it's a nice little tip there. This is designed for Magicka characters in all honesty. It's best on the tank, you can use it on a healer, but it's best on a tank. It's medium difficulty to obtain, will take about 1 to 2 hours once you've got your skill line to level 7. It's absolutely crazy in duels, this is like hands down broke, it's really good. Battlegrounds, it's not horrific, it's really good in kind of objective mode, so like capture the relic, in chaos ball because you can actually block and there's less people hitting you, so you've got a better chance of putting it on somebody and then getting the sustain back. In solo and in duo, when you've got loads of people fighting you, it's not good. In small scale group, again it's not group. Same for medium and for large. So the viability is, yes you can put this on a build and get some good use out of it in a duel and maybe in battlegrounds, but that's about it. It's also a heavy armoured chest, so you can get your 5/1/1 passive still. So all in all, I'd give this a score of 19 out of 45. It's not the best, but it's still decent, and in a duel it's absolutely broke. Our next item is Malacath's Band Brutality. This is really interesting, and it's one that when I saw the patch notes, I was really unsure how to present the information because it's really complex. What this item does is increases your damage by 25%. So any damage you do is increased by 25%. The tooltips don't update though, so just do factor that in. I don't know if it's a bug, but they don't update. And you can't do critical damage. What's more as well is that you can still do critical healing, which is really important. This item, in all honesty, is good on Magicka or Stamina, and as you can guess, it's a DPS item. It doesn't improve your healing, so run this on a damage dealer. As to how easy is it to get, this is pretty hard actually. You have to go to Hrothgar, you have to go through the public dungeon there, which means you have to do the quest, which I had to do, so it takes a lot of time. If you've done the quest already, you're going to save yourself a little bit of time. It took about 2 hours roughly to get this item. In duels, it's pretty good in all honesty, it's just a consistent damage boost. That's also true for Battlegrounds, and true for solo, and true for duo. You notice that solo is slightly lower than duo. The reason is that from testing, in kind of solo play, when you have to burst somebody to kill them really, really quick, if you don't have critical damage, you don't do as much damage overall. So this means all your hits hit harder, but they don't hit as hard as if it was a crit. And because you can't crit, you're getting less damage overall. So in solo play, you are really, really reliant on getting critical hits in order to burst somebody who have like loads and loads of health to zero really fast. If you're playing as kind of a dot build though, this is still very, very viable, which is why it's a 3. In duo, it's slightly higher because actually there's more people with you, and so again you've kind of got that somebody else to help kind of tick it over. For small scale, it's still decent because there's lots of you hitting one person, you're focusing them, you might get maybe 2 or 3 hits out of your combo, not all of it, so that's why it's still really, really good. And it's also true for medium and for large scale. Most of the time you don't always land 3 or 4 skills in a row in those big fights. It's really hard because of just bodies in the way, lag and all that stuff. So this just means that whenever you hit them, it's going to be harder overall. You don't have to kind of hope for RNG and hope you get a crit. So for big fights, this is really good. Viability, it's ring. You can put it on most builds without any real issues. It gives you bonus damage. So actually it's pretty viable. It's a 4 in my eyes. All in all, I'd rank this as 35 out of 45, which means this is very, very, very good. Few little things I want to note, okay? With the changes to the impen and the critical resistance, most people in CP Cyrodiil have around 4,000 critical resist pretty much as a standard now, which means they are absorbing, about 67% critical damage. So this, generally, if someone has really high crit resist, this is better and better. In no CP, that's also the case as well. That actually this gives you so much more damage compared to the critical resist that actually you get more damage overall on consistent damage. The difference though is burst. If you're after a bursty build, a bursty playstyle, this doesn't lend itself to that. Burst relies more on crit damage for just overall more damage. So what I found is that this was really good on dot builds and builds with lots of sustained damage like Magicka Warden because it lacks an execute. It's also really good on Magicka Dragon Knight. On things like Stamina Warden and Stamina Necromancer, it's not as good because actually you have enough burst as it is to kill somebody. I've also tried it on Magicka Sorcerer and it's really, really good on Magicka Sorcerer, and I would recommend it because you need to land 4 or 5 skills in a row, and trying to obviously get 4 or 5 crits to line up is really hard, but getting 4 or 5 skills with slightly higher damage is enough to kill somebody. Again, that's kind of sustained damage, just delayed. Now if you are liking this video, then do leave a like, do comment, and make sure that you are subscribed, as I notice many of you are not still. This item, Ring of the Wild Hunt, is absolutely amazing. Like, it's such a good item to get. And if you plan to get any mythic item and get lots of them, this is the first one you should get. This increases your movement by 15% when you're in combat, and when you're out of combat, 45%. So you basically hit the movement cap in medium armor when you're not in combat, which is crazy. So I use this on the Bowtard Mark II. There's a video on the channel. It's like the hardest hitting sniper in the game currently. And I also use it on Shadow, which is designed for crazy sustain and hit hard. And again, that's a sniper, and there's a video on the channel. It just means you move in and out of combat really fast. For me, this works both on Magicka and Stamina. Speed is king in ESO PvP. If you can get out of the way and avoid the damage completely, you take no damage, so it makes survivability a little bit easier if you can get this item. As for the role, it's good on DPS, healers or tanks. Being able to move is just a benefit for any kind of playstyle. It's pretty easy to get. This took me about one and a bit hours to get, so it's not too hard. That's obviously with level 7 already unlocked. As for duels, this is why would you run it in a duel? In a duel, it's a one-on-one fight. There's no line of sight, so this is pointless. In Battlegrounds, this becomes much better because you have objectives to play, you need to move, you've got line of sight options, so this is much better, but it's not at its fullest in my opinion. As for Cyrodiil, if you're solo or duo or like Imperial City, this becomes significantly better because there's so many people hitting you, that being able to just run away, run around a rock, run around a tree, around a corner, that will keep you alive a lot more than just standing and holding your ground, and so this really allows for that to happen. The issue is when you get snared. For small scale, medium scale and large scale, you see that it goes down and down and down. And the reason is that you're as fast as the slowest person. So if the slowest person, Jack over there, is in a heavy armor build, hold and block, not moving too quick, you can only really go as quick as he can, or he'll be left by himself and he will die. And so that's the real issue with this item. In kind of small groups, or sort of one-on-one or duo and stuff, it's really good. But when you kind of get into bigger fights, it's less and less effective. As for the viability, this is a 3. It's not quite as good as Malacath, which gives you just bonus damage. All this gives you is just literally speed, and that's it. There's no damage, there's no sustain. So this does have some issues with kind of just what else does it bring, and you also have to sacrifice a 5-piece set usually to run one of these items. As for the total, it's 24 out of 45. This is a really good item to get. It's one of the better ones in my opinion. I use this on my snipers, as I've said, and it's just absolutely crazy with the speed you get on a sniper. Just really silly. The next item is Snow Treader's boots, and these are really cool. These are medium armor boots, and they basically make you immune to snares and immobilizers. And there's only ones that can be cleansed, so things like proc sets and stuff that can't be, so any ground based snare they don't always work on, they're a bit finicky. You also find that they don't work on hard CCs, so just to clarify, a hard CC in this game is things that stun you and you can't do anything else but CC break. So it's like, destructive touch, it's toppling charge, fossilize, leap, all of those where you have to break, you can't move, you can't cast skills, that's a hard CC. A snare or an immobilize is something where you can still do something else but you can't move, or you move very slowly. So Encase is a good example, Wall of Frost is a good example, Talons is another good example. So generally, you find that actually this works on lots of stuff in PvP. And what's really good about this is that yes, it can be working on stamina really well, but magic can also use it too. So if you're a Magicka build, this is still quite useful for you. Not as good as stamina in all honesty, but still really good. In my opinion, this is good on any spec, DPS, healer or tank. If you're a tank and you can move without being snared, you're going to find it easier to stay alive. That's true for a healer and also true for a DPS. It's also really easy to obtain. I got this in about an hour. It was really fast. As for duels, it's not great because you're fighting one-on-one and you don't really need to line of sight and move around too much, so it's not as useful. For battlegrounds, there's more objectives to play, there's more snares and more people, so it's more useful. For solo and for duo, you're fighting outnumbered heavily, there's usually somebody spamming Bombard, Blockade of Frost, some form of a snare against you, so this is absolutely crazy, such a good set for those kind of playstyles. As for kind of small scale, and medium scale, and then large scale, you notice it gets less and less and less. And it comes back to the speed ring issue as well. You are only as quick as the slowest person, so if the slowest person doesn't have this set on, and they get snared, you're then snared effectively because you need to stay with them. So you kind of all need to have it or nobody. So viability wise, it works well on any kind of build, in all honesty. It gives you loads of benefits, especially if you're more of a solo player, you might play in a big group but you're more in it for yourself, still really good to run. And what's really cool is that actually, when you kind of look at it all, it's got a high score, but there's loads of benefits which are not listed. So the big thing that I found from using this is you get loads of stamina sustained back because you can't sprint. So when you sprint, you use so much stamina just to move around, and you can't, you don't have to cast shuffle again and again and again. So you get loads of stam sustain built in, like indirectly, which is really useful. And then on top of that, you can still get major expedition, so you can still move. The one downside that I have found with this is if you're fighting somebody and they can sprint and you can't, you will not catch them. That is just the truth, sadly. So you will find it hard to catch people who try to flee and try to escape. So you may want to slot a gap closer if you use this set. Now this item, Thrassian Stranglers, we're going to go through pretty quick because in all honesty, this is not geared for PvP. You can use it slightly, but it's clunky. Basically, when you do damage and you kill people, you get like a bonus damage stack to you. But as you get more damage, you take more damage as a result, and you have less healing and your shields are smaller. So it's a bit If you sneak, going crouch or go invisible, it's all gone as well. So basically, to get damage, you have to kill stuff, but then you take more damage as a result by having this buff, and is easily lost. It can also be lost through load screens too, so it's a bit clunky. It's aimed at Magicka. It's a DPS set, in all honesty. It's really hard to get. It's not good in duels, bad in battlegrounds, bad solo, bad duo, slightly better small scale, slightly better medium scale, slightly better large scale. From testing this, I found that when I was running with really optimized groups, so I had a healer with me, or a few healers, I could afford to start to get this up more and more and more. You can kill wolves to proc this, you can kill guards to proc this, players. If you're in Imperial City, you can go and kill the Daedra there. So you can actually get this up quite quickly if you're in the right mode. But you are completely reliant on a healer. Taking up to 40% more damage is really, really noticeable. That said though, if you get this to 20 stacks with the 40% more damage, you are going to hit like an absolute truck. So on things like Magicka Sorcerer with high range, you can literally nuke people at range if you're in a really large group. So large Zergs in like Imperial City, or in Cyrodiil for example, they can really capitalise on this and have a few people run this if they build it correctly. But your team and the whole Zerg and the whole group has to build around those people having it, giving them armour, giving them buffs, heals. So because of all of that, the viability is really low. You could make it work, but in all honesty, it's too clunky. So it's hit and miss. As you can see, it's got 14 out of 45. It's not the best, but it's still a nice item to have. Our last item is one that really surprised me. This is Talk of Tonal Constancy. What this does, it increases your stamina and Magicka recovery when you're below resource. So if you're low stamina, you get Magicka back. If you're low Magicka, you get stamina back. The issue is that you need to be below 50% of each. When I first saw this, and haven't played the game for a lot, I know that 450 is more like 700 to 800 in CP Cyrodiil. So it's loads and loads of regen. And I thought this would be the meta item for this patch. This plus the Master's Inferno plus 2 Potentes jewelry, golden. Really strong 5-piece effective set. I was really disappointed with this. Like really, really disappointed. I've tried it on Magicka Sorcerer, which is kind of where you would expect it to be really good. I've tried it on Nightblade, I've tried it on Warden, and I was just disappointed on each time. It's aimed to be used for kind of both builds, Magicka or Stamina, and it could be used on DPS, healers or tanks. Having played with it, I think it's best suited for maybe a healer or a tank in all honesty. It's easy to obtain, 1 to 2 hours. It's in duels, it's in battlegrounds, still in solo and duo. And as for small scale, medium scale and a large scale, it gets slightly better. Now the reason why I think this is still across the board generally is because when you're low resources, you generally pop a potion. That potion puts you above 50% most of the time. You then turn the set off. So you can't run tri-stat potions. So you have to change your potion type to Essence of Immovability. You then have issues with the fact that actually your max resource pool for your off stat is generally quite low. So as a kind of Magicka character, you have 15 to 17,000 stamina at the most. That means you really have about 8,000 stamina to work with when you're below 50% in order to get this set to proc. If you play Cyrodiil, or you play PvP often, 8,000 stamina on a Magicka character is like death. If you get stunned, you're like 1, maybe 2 stuns away from dying. At which point, this kind of 50% or less stamina to get the Magicka back, you're not going to benefit from it too much. And it's also true for Magicka as well, that actually if your Magicka is below 50% on a Magicka spec, so like a Sorcerer, you might have say 20,000 Magicka spare, your stamina pool is so low usually that actually you can't really fill it up. It's not big enough to really get the benefit from the sustain back. So again, it's very and having used it on stamina specs, like Nightblades for example, and Stamina Necromancer, exactly the same issues. Your mag pool is just too low, so you end up having to cast mag skills to keep your Magicka pool really low to get the stamina back. But then because your Magicka recovery is like 700-800 normally, it kind of tips you over 50% within 6-7 seconds. So you get a really low uptime on both sides. And again, you've got the potion issue. So viability, it's a 3 because you can make this work on most builds. You can benefit from it, but you don't benefit as much as you would think you would. So for me, I found it quite disappointing and it's actually 25 out of 45 from playing it and testing it. Now, to kind of just bring it all together and put it all in kind of context, I'm now going to show you all of the items together and kind of their overall rankings, and just give you some general pointers, prompts based on the items and how I've tested them and which ones you should use for your playstyle. From testing them, I found, in all honesty, that Bloodlord's Embrace is the best dueling mythic item you can get. Hands down, you can't beat it. It's so good in duels. Regardless of magic or stamina, it is such a strong set to have. So if you're someone who does loads of dueling, this is a really good item to get. I found that actually, if you do lots of Cyrodiil or Imperial City and you're kind of like solo or duo, you fight heavily outnumbered, the Snow Treader boots are absolutely amazing. If you're somebody who goes, actually, I fight kind of just in all PvP modes, you're probably going to benefit from Malacath or the Ring of the Wild Hunt. They're really good because they just give you consistent benefits all the time. The speed is always nice in PvP to have. Malacath is always nice to have extra damage. I found Malacath really shone when you had lots of dots. So on kind of dot builds, Malacath is amazing. And it also works on proc sets as well. So if you use things like Calordrian's Legacy or Valken Scoria, that 25% will buff the set proc as well, which they can't crit normally. So it's a really good way to make proc sets like really nasty. As for the talk of Tonal Constancy, I didn't like it, actually. I spent ages farming it, and I was really disappointed. Your mileage will vary with that. And then for the Stranglers, as I've said, not really going to use them. And if you're enjoying this video so far, then make sure that you have liked, you commented, and you have subscribed, because we post regular ESO content. But before we wrap the video up here, guys, I want to say a massive thank you to all of our Patreons. They are literally helping single-handedly fund the website. They're helping make YouTube a reality. I always give them access to the videos early as a kind of just a thank you. It's really appreciated. And if you want to support us, myself, or the channel, there's a link in the description. But equally, just liking, commenting, and sharing will also help as well. And don't forget to subscribe. But with that said, guys, I am going to wrap this video up here because it's long enough, as I've said. So take care, thanks for watching, and bye.